come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off, because today I am going to review and page through Starfinder, Horizons of the Vast, Planetfall from Paizo Inc. Is this an exciting first chapter in an all-new Starfinder adventure path? Or does Planetfall essentially fall flat? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I am going to be reviewing Starfinder, Horizons of the Vast, Planetfall from Paizo Inc. But first, let me once again thank everybody out there for all the kind thoughts and prayers that have been sent my way regarding my recent triple bypass surgery. It's been 6 weeks since the surgery, and I just began my cardiovascular rehab. All the doctors and nurses tell me that I am way ahead of the curve. So once again, thank you for those kind thoughts and prayers. They really do mean a lot to me. So today, I am going to be reviewing Starfinder, Horizons of the Vast, Planetfall from Paizo Inc. It is written by Ron Lundeen. This 64-page adventure is available as a soft cover. It carries an MSRP of $22.99, or you can get the PDF for $15.99. So let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got Planetfall. So before we dive in, let me just point out that the fine folks over at Paizo Inc. were kind enough to send me this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts about this adventure with you. These days, it's very important that you know that. All right, let's take a look at the back here. I'm not going to read everything off the back, but I do want to give you kind of an idea of what's going on here. Out of this world. In a previously unknown system in the Vast lies an uncharted and uninhabited planet newly discovered. The heroes lead one of several groups tasked with making the planet safe for new homes. As they establish a brand new settlement and explore the surrounding wilderness, they must contend with wild animal attacks, dissatisfied residents, and strange mysteries. Will their settlements thrive, or will the heroes and all those who rely on them perish upon this new world? All right, let's jump on in. Do want to mention that we've got a lot of interior artists throughout. So give us a moment. Take a peek right here. So on the back of the front cover and the front of the back cover, we have a brand new ship, which you tend to find with all of the Starfinder adventure paths. This is the Competent Star Settler, and it is a ship that is designed specifically for planetary settlement, because the ship actually breaks apart so that materials can be used to build a settlement. I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought it was kind of neat. All right, should point out that there'll be spoilers ahead. So if you are a gamer who's hoping that your game master is going to run Planetfall, then I would certainly recommend that you stop watching this video. There are over 1,000 videos on this channel. Go check another one of them out, because otherwise it's going to ruin your fun. Okay, so hopefully it's just myself and the game masters out there. So this is the first chapter of an all-new adventure path, which is going to be broken down into 6 parts. So I should point out that there are things with this adventure that I really like, and then there are things with this adventure that I really dislike and find frustrating. And I'm going to discuss that. So I am not picking on the author. I am not picking on Ron Lundeen whatsoever. He has written some really good adventures, but I do have some issues with it. I find problems with this adventure. But then on the flip side, there's a bunch of really cool stuff too. So we'll get into that. So this is pretty much broken up into 3 parts. So kind of the background of what's going on here is that there's this planetary system that has been discovered by long-range sensors from the Pact Worlds and other factions as well. And it appears that there's a planet there that is pristine. There is no sentient life on it. And basically, all these governments and companies form charters, and they all go racing off to this planet so they can all plant their flags, because the planet is also, no doubt, rich in resources as well. So the player characters actually are the leaders of one of these charters, which I found very interesting. Once again, this is a first level adventure, so you don't usually see player characters placed in a role of leadership right off the bat in the adventure. So they're going to have a lot to do with how this settlement is formed, what makes up the settlement, what do they devote resources to building. And that's one of the aspects of this adventure I really, really like. And when we get to that portion, I will talk about it. So the players end up landing on the planet and they start building their settlement. And of course, they have to focus on the basics first. And I will point out that early on, there are a variety of set piece encounters that all kind of strike me as, I want to say like fetch quests, because you're really not fetching anything, but it's almost like, okay, your first level, so we're going to have you go down into the tavern basement and kill the giant rats. And hey, thanks for doing that. Here's my gun. I mean, it's like all of the encounters are kind of like that. It's like, go kill something, and then thank you for doing that. Here's a prize. And I find that pretty weak. And I got to be honest. I mean, that's how a lot of these early encounters operate. Now, with these encounters, these set pieces as well, you got to keep in mind that there is a hex crawl element to this adventure. And I'm going to take a guess that that element is going to be there for other chapters of this adventure path as well. So I should also mention that the recent Starfinder Galaxy Exploration Manual will probably come in handy for game masters who are going to run this campaign, this adventure path. I'm not going to say that it's essential that you got to have it, but I can see it being very, very helpful. So what's going to happen is we've got all these various different encounters that really depend on what goes on with the hex crawl for the player characters as they're going and they're exploring the area around where they've placed their settlement, where they've built their settlement. So a lot of things are going to happen once something else has been found. Now, the hex crawl portion is a little further on here. And I will say the way it's laid out, I would say it's going to be a bit of a hassle for the player at the table, because they're going to be flipping back and forth, in fact, there you go. There's the map right there. Flipping back and forth, back and forth. So we see these hexes, A, B, C, D. There's something located there. And I gotta admit, some of these encounters are pretty interesting. It just seems that most of the encounters that are taking place in the settlement are sort of, So eventually what's going to happen is you're going to find that the settlement's going to grow. So you're going to have more and more NPCs showing up. Now, there is information about important NPCs for this settlement as well. But a lot of these people are going to become dissatisfied. And that's irregardless of what the player characters do. There's going to be a growing level of dissatisfaction with these settlers. And it actually starts because of something that happens with the player characters, which regardless how they resolve that situation, it's still going to happen. So there's this cult that forms, this oddball cult. And regardless, like I said, regardless of what the player characters do, that's going to happen. So as this dissatisfaction continues to grow, this one NPC challenges the leadership of the player characters and demands an election. That's what this section is here. It's all about this election. She demands an election, and a lot of the settlers also agree. So there's different things that the player characters can do in order to try to win this election. And whoever earns the most points by doing different things is going to be the winner of the election. But if the player characters lose the election, the very next day, the company that's in charge of their charter indicates that, no, that was not a legal election and the player characters are back in charge. I find that to be poor adventure design. And I'm not going to harp on it a bunch, but it's along the lines, as a game master, what you try to avoid doing, you try to avoid where no matter what the player characters do, you've got a set story and this is all what's going to happen, and it doesn't matter what the players do. So if the players lose and then their charter company the very next day says, oh no, you guys are still in charge, I'm sure some of the players will be like, ha ha. But then they'll sit there and think, well, wait a second. So what was the point of us doing all that campaigning and debating and all these other things? It didn't matter. It didn't matter that we lost the election. We're still in charge. I don't like that at all. It's just me. It's just me. And I'm old school. And I understand adventure paths tend to be very railroady, and I get that. But it shouldn't be to the point where no matter what the player characters did, this is what's going to happen. I'm just not a fan of that. All right, so now we get into the areas of the planet where the player character's charter is. And you got to keep in mind, there are all these other charters on the planet too. So this is just the area that the player characters are going to explore. So we have rules about kind of the hex crawl, and then a breakdown of what each of these areas ends up being. And as I mentioned before, I like a lot of these encounters in the hex crawl portion of the adventure. We get some cool new monsters, new creatures as well throughout. The spider goat skeleton. So we get into the final section of the adventure, and I actually really like this final section because the player characters begin to learn that maybe there's no sentient life on this planet now, but there was. There was a previous attempt at colonizing this planet, and they find a laboratory which is giving forth it's like producing necrotic energy, which is affecting the local animals and plant life and things like that. So they have to find a way to shut that down. And I like it. It's a bit of a dungeon crawl kind of thing. Here's the lab right there. But I do like this. I found this to be pretty interesting. Although kind of the big bad at the end is, in my opinion, a little bit of a letdown, but not terribly. So that is the adventure. So essentially, the adventure is going to end when hopefully the player characters have eliminated this source of necrotic radiation, and which would threaten the settlement. So then we get into this charter development, and I had talked about how I think this is really, really cool. I really, really like this. This is kind of like domain play, if you're familiar with that term. But the player characters don't have to be like 15th level to build their stronghold or their wizard tower or the thieves guild. They start off right off the bat with their developing their charter, and it's different projects, different downtime activities. There's different buildings that provide different bonuses that they're going to be able to build. And the whole premise of this adventure is that this isn't just like the first week or two that the player characters are on this planet. This is months. Now, that also brings up something that I think newer game masters might have a bit of a problem with, and that is to really get the most out of this adventure, you're going to have to fill in some of the blanks as far as what's going on over a period of time. If you really want to make the settlement important to the player characters, the settlement should mean everything to the player characters. So these are all different projects that the characters can basically set up. This is what we're focused on. This is what the settlement is focused on. We have events as well. We have different buildings. Then we get into the adventure toolbox, which, as usual with any of the adventure paths, this is going to give you some new options, as well as bestiary. We've got a new background, as well the beast blood. We have a few new creatures in the bestiary. And that will wrap up the adventure with basically a breakdown of the planet itself. And what happens, from what I could see, which sounds very interesting, what happens in the next chapter of the adventure path is that the player characters find these people have built a town right on the edge of the player character's charter. And it's like, what are they going to do? And there's some other stuff going on too, but that sounds pretty interesting. All right, so that is Planetfall for Starfinder, the first chapter in the Horizons of the Vast adventure path. Swing on over to the other camera because I'll provide some final thoughts as well as my review score. I gotta say, this adventure path is kind of like, I'm torn over it. Because as I mentioned, there's stuff that I really do like. I like the charter management stuff. I like the domain play that's going to be available to the player characters right off the bat. I like the fact that the player characters are essentially placed in a role of leadership for all these NPCs right off the bat. So I like that as well. There's some silly things in this adventure that just kind of don't make sense. Kind of like, for an example, the planet has been discovered just a few weeks ago, and then suddenly all these governments and companies have sent out basically settlers to basically just kind of colonize this planet without anybody ever actually checking it out. I know this isn't Traveler, this is science fantasy, but still, I sit there going, okay. And as I mentioned before, that whole election thing, and then like the formation of the cult, and like it doesn't matter what the player characters do, these things happen. Even if they lose the election, they're put back in charge. I don't like that at all. So here's the weird thing. So like the toolbox aspect of this adventure, I really, really like. And in fact, the third act of the adventure, I really like as well. The first two acts of the adventure, not so much. So, I don't know. Plus, I think this adventure path, at least this first chapter, is probably going to be kind of difficult for newer GMs to really pull off. You're going to have to invest some time into creating situations to kind of expand this a bit so that it's not like, well, hand wave 3 months, hand wave 2 months, just my opinion. Anyway, on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Planetfall a 6.5 out of 10. I like it, but there's problems. All right. That is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also tell you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs right here on YouTube as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news and first looks at tabletop games. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit our home, thegaminggang.com, for all latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy some great gaming with your very own gang. Oh, you're still here. Well, while you're kicking it, how about subscribing to the Gaming Gang channel? Or seeing the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch? Or finding out what YouTube recommends you check out here at my channel? And of course, don't forget, get your geek on at thegaminggang.com.